Hey everybody, it is Chris. It's Thursday, July the 25th. Hope everyone is doing well. I've got my Paris Olympics shirt on to celebrate the opening ceremonies tomorrow. Before he slips off the stage, and I think he's in the process of slipping off the stage, I wanted to spend one more video talking about Joe Biden. So I broke down his speech last night. I thought it was okay. But I've been fascinated by the reaction, the extremeness of the reactions, since Biden decided and announced he was not going to run less than a week ago for a second term. So on the one hand, you have Donald Trump and many Republicans saying, worst president ever, most ineffectual, too old, should never have been president. And then you have the left sort of celebrating Biden as a hero of democracy, as someone who's going to go down as one of the great presidents in history, deeply underrated. So it's kind of like no one's in the middle ground. It's either Biden's the best ever or Biden's the worst ever. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the Biden presidency. And obviously, look, this is coming in the midst of the end of the Biden presidency, right? It's not 10 or 15 years removed from it where we can analyze what all the programs he put in place actually meant. So there's a little bit of you're too close to the screen. But I still wanted to do it because I guess I fall more in that middle ground. So on the one hand, on the positive side, Joe Biden ran to try to bring, basically his words, normality back to the White House. That we had gone through 4 years of Charlottesville and those race riots, and then COVID and Donald Trump's mishandling of it, and then the Trump contesting of the 2020 elections, January 6th, 2 impeachments. I think that Biden, by and large, did that, right? He wasn't impeached. There were no attempts to overthrow democracy. He did, in many ways, sort of restore what we've come to think of as normality back to the presidency, which is what he said he wanted to do and what he ran on. I also think on the positive side to Biden, he got way more done with the divided Congress than at least I thought he possibly could. There was the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. There was the Chips and Science Act. There was the Inflation Reduction Act. These are huge government spending programs that I'm surprised he was able to do, and they will have long-term impacts on American innovation, the American economy, et cetera, et cetera. So, to me, I think Biden showed himself to be a pretty able navigator of policy battles, someone who did make good on his pledge to make things more normal. So that's the positive end. On the negative end, I think he was hugely hamstrung by his age and the deterioration that came with that age, which we only found about, honestly, too late. We should have known about it far earlier. The White House essentially and his senior staff essentially sort of kept him from the public, hid him from the public because they suspected that Biden would look too old and too frail and too infirm to be president, or certainly to run for another 4 years. That was exposed on June 27th when we saw him in the debate, and everything that came from that, including all the way up to his drop out of the race. So the thing that Biden didn't do well is use the bully pulpit, because he really couldn't, because he couldn't hold press conferences regularly. He couldn't give big speeches regularly. He couldn't sort of publicly cajole members to be for him regularly. He didn't do that, and I think that's a really important part of the presidency. The power of performance matters. It is not just about behind the scenes maneuvering. It is also about using the power of what you have as the president of the United States, a massive megaphone, to bend people, whether it's in the United States or internationally, to your will. And Biden just didn't do that. So I was reading through a lot of these Biden, mostly praise of how great Biden is and how good his speech was. And I came across this piece by John Harris, who is a friend, in Politico. I'll link to it in the comments. There's 2 paragraphs I want to read to you because I think it really captures how I feel. Biden has been essentially, I'm quoting, Biden has been essentially a half president. He has carried out the programmatic portion of the presidency, presiding over far-reaching legislation and aggressively using the policy-making tools of the executive branch as effectively as any president in recent decades, Harris went on. On the performative dimension of the presidency, using words to inspire his supporters, box in his enemies, to reframe debates, he has been arguably the weakest Oval Office occupant in more than a century, back to the days before television or even radio, when most Americans might read about a presidential speech but had never heard the president's voice. I think that's a really nice way to put it and really encapsulates how I feel about it. I do not think Joe Biden is going to go down as one of our greatest presidents because his ability to communicate his message was hugely hampered by his age and his growing infirmity. At the same time, I do not think he's going to go down as one of our worst presidents because he got lots of stuff done. Helped the economy recover from COVID. Did something that presidents promised to do but almost never do, which is pass a massive infrastructure bill. Leaned into science and innovation in America with the science chips and science bill. So there's a lot that he did. To me, though, you're talking about a president in the kind of, as we rate them, 1 to 45. I think we're kind of talking about someone in the mid-20s, maybe low 30s would be my guess of where he winds up. Maybe a little bit higher than that. I can't imagine he'd go lower than sort of the 31, 32, 33. But I just think our tendency in our political dialogue is to say it's either the greatest ever or the worst ever. And I think the truth often lies kind of somewhere in between those poles, and I definitely think that's the case with Joe Biden. So I just wanted to offer my thoughts, which I know are a little different than most of what you're seeing out there on Joe Biden. Okay, that's it. So subscribe to this channel. Just hit the subscribe button. It's free. Like this video. Again, easy. Comment on this video. Do it for the algorithm, people. And tell 10 friends about this video. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow with my Friday live stream, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I hope you check it out. Be well.